Alright, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stickity Stacks in this thing, representing TKOG. Thank you, Lord Jesus. So, I'm going to be updating Galaxy Eyes Photon for you guys. I've already done a list with Afterglow proxies. I basically have 2 real Afterglows and 1 proxy, and I'm also going to be proxying my 3rd orbital because I sold it. Well, actually, I traded it to get the rocket cards, and since I got a reprint, I should have just got rid of my whole playset because I have the OG orbital, and it's like it dropped to so much in value. I kind of missed out on a plus I could have got by flipping it and getting the lower, the ones that cost least. But anyways, this deck, it's like kind of in a good place. It's essentially a better Salamangreat. It's like a combo deck, but you don't have to really build crazy like super duper scary boards all the time. It's really good with resource management, recursion, self-replacing engines. It's very consistent. Yeah, you have like consistency issues in the terms of like you don't draw hands where you can't search your cards. Sometimes you draw hands where your search cards don't work because you don't have like the proper sequence or the proper combination. Like sometimes you might draw cards like Vanisher and Orbital that like require for you to commit something to the field, and you'll end up having to normal summon your Orbital and like special Vanisher and then like equip it to Vanisher, like there's just weird hands like that. That's why I think I might find my 3rd copy of Photon Thrasher and put it in there, because just having a Galaxy or Photon monster on the field really helps, and it changes a lot for this deck. Afterglow did do justice. This deck can OTK a lot more consistently than it's ever been able to. In addition to that, he's an extender for your turn 1 board, so Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand is pretty much a go-to now for your turn 1 boards, just because he's going to allow you to put 2 rank 8s on the board versus 1 just summoning Lord and passing, So it gives you a bit more aggressive push through hand traps. It also allows you to OTK more consistently. It's an extender. It's a really, really good card. The deck definitely could do with cards like that. A lot of the cards do special summon or search or do both. That's pretty much what the deck does in a gist. And there are a few utility cards here and there. It's not like a big toolbox deck, though. It's more like a build-a-board workshop, you know what I mean? So I'm going to get into the list. I digress. I have to play hand traps, and as much as I like to play light attribute hand traps for the synergistic properties of Galaxy Soldier, all the light attribute hand traps are not that great against the decks that I'm trying to beat. So let's go ahead and get into the list, you guys. So I'm starting off with 3 copies of Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. He's still extremely important. I am no longer playing Desires because I was telling you guys when Afterglow came out, which speaking of, we're playing 3. Afterglow's 2 real, 1 proxy. When Afterglow came out, I was saying like how important it is to have like at least 2 of these in deck. You want, basically the proper rotation is you really want 1 in hand, and that's going to float from your hand to your grave and back and forth interchangeable off of cards like Soul Flare and Galaxy Knight. And you want like at least 1 in deck, preferably 2, to resolve Afterglow. But the ideal situation is to have 1 in grave, 1 in hand, and 1 in your deck. And you always want 1 in your deck no matter what, to resolve cards like Vanisher again and again, and resolve Afterglow again and again. Card's really important. I also have a card in my main deck that can recycle this. It does come up. You want to be able to maintain stability. You don't want to play like a Glass Cannon deck that's combo or bust. Galaxy Eyes is not really that kind of deck. It can definitely progress its board towards, depending on the matchup. Basically, there's different cards you could summon that are better than against certain decks. But at the end of the day, you always want to put Photon Lord on the field. You always want to end on Soul Flare. I'm even thinking about putting Seal back in my deck and putting the Amorphage in there, because since the Buster Lock's banned, I kind of just want another way to have some form of degeneracy, something that's a bit less fair, to stun my opponent, even if it's like, I don't know, summoning like something like Kawakima or Draco. Like I was thinking about that in my Dragon Mates. I've just been, researching, kind of just looking for stuff to make this deck more powerful than what it is. Because its toolbox is cool. It does a lot of basically consistent XYZ summons. But at the same time, it's like these monsters are really not as like scary sometimes as like cards like Calamities and Vanity's Ruler and Herald of Perfection, and even cards like Borreload Savage sometimes outclass like a Photon Lord or a Titanic. Like there's still no Omni Negate rank 8 that's worth it. Like Lancelot is not really worth it. So there's still stuff that I'm like kind of tweaking with here, but Afterglow is a really, really, really good card. It's like a heaven sent. This deck definitely needed something like this. So these are like brothers. You want to utilize these cards interchangeably with each other. These are like the soul, the heart and the soul of the deck are these 6 monsters right here. And if you guys don't know what Afterglow does, essentially if you control Galaxy Eyes monster, you can special him from hand. That's an inherent summon, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, it may be in effect, but I think it's not. It's like the way it's worded is like an inherent summon. But if it's an activation, that's totally fine. But it's an extender. If you detach it to activate an XYZ's effect, you essentially get to grab a Galaxy Eyes Photon from your Hander deck and either special it or attach it to an XYZ. If you activate this effect during the battle phase, which is where it gets broken, you can double the attack of all monsters, of all number XYZ monsters you control. So it makes a card like Prime Photon. Where's that boy at? He's fat. It makes a card like Prime Photon really, really fat. This guy already gets huge, and then you can double his attack after that, and that's how you can just one-shot your opponent. It's essentially like Utopia the double, so really, really good cards here. Moving forward to basically my engine enablers, we have 3 copies of Galaxy Soldier, and 3, like I said, I'm proxying my 3rd because I traded it for some rocket cards for my Dragon Mates, and I don't regret it because it got reprinted now. 3 copies of Orbital. These are the better searchers. Any searcher that does not require essentially like a normal summon, like for example Galaxy Wizard, they're always going to be ideal because you don't really need to commit these to the field to get their, like, basically they're not like Galaxy Wizard, so to speak. They're really just, they're not like Galaxy Wizard, and that's why I feel like they're superior searchers. Galaxy Wizard is good, but because you don't have to burn your normal summon on these cards, and this actually puts Galaxy Eyes in grave, these are extremely important, and these are the ones that you want to use. These help you to play under pressure a lot more comfortably because you still can determine which normal summon you want, if that makes sense. Because sometimes one is better than the other. And speaking of, I'm still on 3 Wizard. Wizards can sometimes just unbreak my hands. It's just the truth. Like, I just value consistency cards. By cutting Wizard, it's like I lose more access to cards like Expedition, Trance, Zero, and also Afterglow. Afterglow is really, really important. So now Wizard is actually stronger than he's ever been before. And so these are the reasons why. Your normal summon's either going to go to Wizard or Galaxy Knight. That's just the gist of it. So to be honest, if you're not summoning Knight, you're summoning Wizard, and that's just how it is. I still value this card. I know a lot of people cut it, and it's understandable. A lot of times you do want to normal summon Knight, but there are certain roles that Knight cannot fill that Galaxy Wizard can, especially when you're playing through so many interruptions. Just being able to search a Trance and get a 1-card XYZ is going to be really, really strong, especially when you're bringing out Afterglow and you're just summoning Prime Photon and you're one-shotting your opponent off of just one Galaxy Wizard, which is really, really good. So it's like a 1-card OTK with certain instances, and then I'm also on 3 copies Photon Vanisher. This is one of my favorite extenders in this deck. He's so good. He's really, really pivotal and very interchangeable in your combo sequences. This card is pretty much one of your go-tos, even though these search better cards. It's just what he offers to your inboard is really, really important. It's a free body. It gets you access to Galaxy Eyes. That is basically the weapon, so to speak, the sword that Galaxy Eyes Soulflare is going to have in his hand to combat certain monsters. It's turning him into an interruption, basically. This card is really, really strong. And its level does matter. Also, it being a warrior, if you ever wanted to play like the iSoul package that I mentioned like months ago, I was talking about that. You can always play that. And I'm also on 3 copies of Brave. So if I were to categorize it, basically almost every Galaxy Eyes or Photon monster can be interchangeable in the sense that they can be a starter, an extender, a recovery, or a follow-up. Because also, even if they just put extra bodies on field, making Soulflare is both a recovery and a follow-up at the same time. Making Union Carrier is the same way, you know. So some of these cards, even if they don't search, just because they put free bodies on field, they can search because they can be converted into a Union Carrier, which still gets you access to Orbital. So a lot of these cards are very, very multi-purpose and flexible, even though they don't have a high amount of utility in the terms of problem solving and combating boards. They do exactly pretty much the same thing, which is going to be special summon and search. And that in itself is why these cards can be an extender. They can be a follow-up. They can be your recovery card all in one. You know, they're just really, really good. So they have like a level of utility that's just not like, for example, Shaddolls or Dragon Maids or Salamangreats. You know, it's just their utility is different. But because of that, they are multi-purpose, and not every deck has that level of utility. So I'm just going to go ahead and move these out the way, because essentially what I'm getting to now is the lower quality extenders. Obviously, Vanisher and Galaxy Soldier are going to be your higher quality extenders, as well as Afterglow. So I could kind of just leave these cards here so you guys can see kind of like just the organization pattern here. So these are like higher quality extenders, because I've gone through all my searchers pretty much. I mean, Expedition can be a searcher in certain instances, and as well as Photon Sanctuary. So that is another consistency card, but I'll break it down after the profile. So now these are extenders. This is a starter only because you have to control no monsters. So this is like a starter. That's why I want to play 3. Even though I play Roto, which makes it technically 3 copies, I want to max out on this card because it really does solve a lot of problems for this deck. And it's a 21 beat stick, which does actually put pressure on board ASAP No Rocky. Galaxy Brave is one of my favorite cards in this deck. I absolutely max out on it at 3. It's multi-purpose because it can change its level. It's a free body for cards like Carrier and Soul Flare, XYZs, etc. You name it, this card just fills a lot of roles, and he can get really, really big. He can actually become a 3,000 beater on command, or 4,000 beater. So he can randomly just game shot your opponent. He's a really, really good card. And then Galaxy Knight is more of a starter. Even though he's a reborn card, he basically just targets Galaxy Eyes and brings it back. He's more of like a starter. For your inboard, this is like the last card you want to commit to. Unless you're like playing around Nib or hand traps, you're going to use them earlier. A Galaxy Knight is arguably more important than Galaxy Wizard. Now moving past that, we have the one Photon Advancer. This is something you can definitely play more of. It's just kind of just like, it's a searchable extender when you need it, because there's only so many names you can use. For example, this is once per turn, this is once per turn, and you can't summon more than one of these per turn. So sometimes you just need that extra body and you'll search it out, and that's why I play this, because it's a different name. Because all of these have those clauses where you can basically only like special them once or use their effect once. And for the remainder of the Galaxy cards, I'm playing one Cleric. This card is basically just Pot of Avarice, and what you want to do is you want to use this to recycle Soul Flare and like Photon Lord, etc. You can even recycle Titanic Galaxy and your Afterglow targets. And what you want to do next is use the Soul Flare that you recycled off this to recycle this. And you have this loop where you don't run out of resources, you don't deck out, and you don't run out of extra deck cards. So that you can just keep playing the grind game as long as you need to. Even though this deck can OTK, just the fact that it can grind when necessary, that's why I like this as a one-up flex spot. You can absolutely not play it, but there will be times when you really will regret not playing the Cleric. He's really, really good for the situations that he calls for. So now getting into that, we're playing hand traps. I'm playing 3 copies of Ash, 3 copies of Ghost Spell, and then double DD Crow. I honestly like DD Crow a lot this format. DD Crow can hit the Schism target when they activate it. Chain hit the Shadol monster. DD Crow against Drytrons, whether you're hitting their Ritual spell, hitting the Drytron monster, the Bintin when they chain to tribute it. It's just crazy. Even when they activate the Ritual spell to Ritual summon from the grave, you could DD Crow the target. DD Crow the Natasha will literally save your life. Hitting the Cloud Castle target against Virtual World. I can name just a list of cards, like a list of applications where DD Crow is actually like game changing. I really, really, really want to play it at 3, but like these just cover a lot more ground. So those are the 8 hand traps. And now this is basically a starter and an extender and a follow-up and a recovery card all in one. Photon Sanctuary is a very, very powerful spell in this deck. And to be honest, if you want to see the list of starters, here are the starters, and I'll go ahead and show you the extenders. I'll break this down right here for you guys so you guys can see just what we're working with here. I pretty much showed you guys the extenders. Keep in mind that Afterglow is an extender as well, but it can be a starter in certain circumstances. But here are all of the starters that this deck has. I've pretty much shown the extenders. Anything that searches for the archetype is a starter. So you essentially have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 starters. And that's excluding random just interactions where you put 2 bodies on field and make a Union Carrier and get access to Photon Orbital or make Soul Flare. So these are all really, really, really flexible starters at that, because not only do they search the card they search, but there's a body on field that you can commit to a Link play or an XYZ play. So I like it a lot. But Photon Sanctuary is a 1-card Union Carrier, 1-card Orbital. Basically, this card just, it's crazy. Like, this card is really, really strong. When your board gets broken and you have Sanctuary, you can just make Soul Flare off of 1 Sanctuary, add Galaxy Knight, Noma him, bring back Galaxy Eyes, and you have Soul Flare and Lord off of a Sanctuary. And all it did was make 2 tokens. This card's broke. Next up, one of your more superior extenders are going to be Galaxy Expedition. This is like pretty much better than, I want to say it's better than obviously like Thrasher Advancer. It's better than Brave. It's even better than Afterglow. The reason being is because it can pretty much tutor those cards and other better cards, and it's less of a like a requirement or restriction, so to speak. You're going to have high levels all the time. But for example, if you ever, thank you, babe. If you ever had to pick between like any of your other extenders and this is more than likely the extender that you want. Because even if you want Afterglow, like having Afterglow in hand is cool, but the reason why this is better is because this gets you Afterglow, it gets you Soldier, it can get you Brave, it can get you Galaxy Eyes. There are certain hands where I have a normal summon, and I literally expedition out my Galaxy Knight, link him and something else off into a Soul Flare, use Soul Flare to add the Knight to hand normally, and then bring Galaxy Eyes back off. I do that also with Photon Galaxy Trance, which is another really, really powerful extender. This helps you to play through just a ton of interruptions. This should be like the last card you activate. If you ever have this in your hand, this should always be the last card you activate after you play through as much as you can play through. Because you can game shot your opponent off of this alone going into Prime with Afterglow. It's just crazy. This card is really, really good. And then also we have Galaxy Zero. The reason why Rhoda can be an extender as well is because it can get you your basically your Vanisher or your Thrasher or even your Advancer. So all of these are extenders, but I like the spell extenders because they can obviously be used for multiple purposes. They're really, really good. And the last card in my main deck is the one of Called by the Grave. I don't have a ton of ways to combat Droll or hand traps of that nature, but I just, I main deck the Call by just to raise the ceiling. Now getting into the side deck, I'm siding Triple Transmigration. I don't like main decking this right now because it's more of a like hardcore going first card. And whenever you're going second against meta, you need every card in your hand to be playable. So that's why I just like siding this when you're going first. Because it's a blowout and it helps to combat cards like Droplets and Dark Ruler, which people hit on your board. And it's an extra negate that you can just RNG into, and it just makes your board more impermeable. It's really, really strong. And speaking of, I was on the triple Nib. Nib is obviously a blowout. All the turn enders I'm pretty much siding. Nib, Lancia, and Droll. And then another high impact blowout is going to be Evilly. I pretty much side to either break the board or prevent the board from happening. These can prevent the board from happening. This can break the board. And the deck's already really, really good at going second. If I have the right combination of hand traps to simplify the game state, I can either game shot my opponent just for like a ton of damage, or I can break their board and make my own, which is going to be really, really good, you guys. So the reason why I want to play this is because when I'm playing against Drytron, they can easily play through like 2 of my interruptions or even 3 with the right hand, which is really why that deck is so good. To be honest, it can play through so much, but if I have Seal and I summon Kawakimar or Draco and lock them out of summoning Lights and Darks, it might lock me out, but if I already have my board established, I already have game on board. So I want this because they can just end their turn. I don't really have anything in my main deck right now that's like good enough. Even if I locked them out their extra deck, they could still summon like Herald and stuff like that. They could summon the ritual spell, the Drytron ritual monster that attacks everything. You don't need that 4K. So like I just want something like this just to combat meta more. So these are cards that I'm thinking about like finding space for. And let me check timer. Okay, cool. Now for the extra deck, it's really, really tight, and I wish I had more space. I'm playing 2 copies of Soul Flare and 1 Union Carrier. These are utility cards. When you're playing through hand traps like Ash and Bell and Skullmeister and Giddy Crow, the reason why this deck can play through those so well is because since their hand traps are not negating or destroying any of my cards, basically, I still have the bodies left over, so even if they, like, for example, Ghost Bell my Galaxy Knight, and they Ash Blossom my Expedition or my Galaxy Soldier, I can still convert those into a link like this or this to play through those hand traps and get advantage through them, which is really, really cool. Double Lord is definitely significant. There's no way you're going to be playing Galaxy Eyes in any format with only 1 Lord, and that's just the truth. This is your go-to boss monster. He searches your entire deck. He has protection. He negates monsters. He is literally your defender. And then I play Titanic as well. You can summon this under the Galaxy Trench, restriction, which is really, really important. And having a spell negator in the form of a rank 8 is basically a different form of interruption that the deck really needs. Because basically, the rank 8s that you're ending on typically only interact with monsters. So you really want a card like this. And then we have Felgrand. This is for Afterglow shenanigans. You summon this turn 1. Detach Afterglow, grab a Galaxy Eye, summon him. And then you have Felgrand plus another rank 8. And whatever else your in board was. And then for breaking boards, we have Cypher Blade, we have Photon, Full Armor Photon Dragon. These cards are really, really powerful to put pressure on your opponent. Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon. We have Prime Photon, and shout out to my friend Valente. This is not my Zeus, I'm borrowing it. He let me use his Zeus. We also have Zeus. You can make a 4 material Zeus, whether you go into this and stack this, because you can still use this as an XYZ material, but you cannot use Blade as. So you're either going to choose Blade or him, and you're obviously going to go for Zeus all the time. So you can summon Zeus that way, or you can go into Infinity and use Infinity to absorb a monster, even if you have to like negate something, and you can still make a 4-material Zeus that way as well. So Zeus is really good in this deck for a lot of different reasons, and also because he's a light attribute, you can summon him under the Photon Sanctuary restriction, which if you guys notice, that's why my entire extra deck is all light, because I care that much about Sanctuary. I love that card. It's my favorite card in this deck pretty much. And then lastly, these are like for breaking boards, dismantling stuff, and game shotting your opponent. And obviously Zeus is just ridiculously strong in this deck. And then these are also part of your end board. This is for protection. You pretty much make your entire board just like Dragoon, unable to be targeted, unable to be destroyed by card effects, and they all have negates on them. You can equip him with Photon Orbitals so that he himself is not protected by his own effect, and he can no longer be destroyed by battle. So he can be destroyed by battle, he can be destroyed by card effects, and he can be targeted. Good luck getting over that without a Zeus. Which literally, if I see an XYZ and I am even like thinking, like if just on some cognitive responses, like, oh, he's summoning a Zeus, I can use Soul Flare to pop that XYZ ASAP. And that's going to be better than letting them attack and having to use my negates to force out one Zeus. So this card pretty much makes your boards unbreakable to a degree. And Infinity is so important because it's an Omni Negate, and the deck does not have any other Omni Negates outside of this and Transmigration, which are really important. So that is my Galaxy Eyes Photon deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I've been playing this deck for years, and it's been really fun for me. Obviously, I understand that there's a level that this deck can reach, and it's not really going to be able to go past that level right now. Right now, it is definitely tier 2 material. I don't know if it's going to be a tier 2 deck. I just know that it has pretty much all the makings and the blueprint that you want out of a tier 2 deck. It's good, it's strong, it's nowhere near weak, it's not like unbeatable, but at the same time, it's not going to die to 1 or 2 interruptions. And also, it's balanced enough to where there's nothing about the deck that really screams ban, you know? That's why it's like tier 2 material to me. God bless you guys. Jesus loves you. Y'all have a wonderful day. Deuces.